What's going on, guys? Welcome to the NFL Expert Roundtable, one of my favorite shows, and certainly with everything going on right now, it's nice to start thinking about some more NFL. I am Peter Jennings, also known as CSU Ram 88, of course, joined by Al Smizzle, Al Zeidenfeld. Al, how you doing?
I'm good, Pete. How are you?
Doing great. It's that time of year. And, of course, Roto World's own Adam Levitan. Adam, how you doing, man?
Sweating my hockey games. I'm doing good.
Yeah, I am sweating hockey, college football, NBA, and talking some NFL. So it's certainly that time of year, and we're just going to dive right into it so we have enough time to talk about the late games here, which have a lot of fantasy goodness. So, Adam, I'm going to start with you. We have a pretty ugly game to start off, Kansas City and Buffalo. What are your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, so when they go up to the Ralph, I really hate to play guys. Now, I know we've read and we've heard that Jamal Charles is matchup proof, and I agree with that to some extent. Maybe he's a tournament play just because he's Jamal Charles, but I typically don't like to use guys up in the Ralph. I really don't. So I'm not on Jamal Charles. Travis Kelce was a guy we talked about last week a ton, and I think we all said that we like Travis Kelce as kind of the point per dollar guy behind Gronk, who we said when we were all over. I'm not on Kelce this week. I think this is a week, again, where we pay up for tight end, whether it's Jimmy Graham or it's Julius Thomas. I don't think I'm going to go for Kelce given his meager usage and the spot. The spot last week was against the Jets. This week is against Buffalo up in the Ralph.
For sure, and certainly I'm on the same page. Charles, I think, has a little more value or is a little more enticing on DraftKings just with a PPR factor. Smiz, what are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. It's like there's certain spots that I like to attack, and I don't like to attack the strongest.
Smiz? All right. Well, we might have lost Smiz. Smiz, you back?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. I don't know what happened.
Freezing, and I don't know why.
And for those of you watching, or I guess they're probably not watching, I just said to refresh in the chat. So Adam talked briefly about Buffalo, Kansas City. Smiz, give your opinion. If you guys are just tuning in now, not too much to worry about because I don't think there's much goodness. But Smiz, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like banging my head into a wall with the Bills' defense either. For me, Charles is a fade in cash games. Watkins is hurt, so there's really nobody I want on Buffalo. Really low total. Might be a close game, but nothing I really want to attack here.
Okay, I think that's more than fair. And the next game is kind of along the same lines. Adam, what are your initial thoughts looking at the Dolphins and Lions?
Yeah, I tweeted out today, Miami in terms of yards per play allowed, their defense is number 1 in the league. Detroit in terms of yards per play allowed, they're number 3 in the league. This game only has a total of 43.5. And you normally when you see games up there in Detroit and Ford Field, you think, hey, this game's gonna be a shootout. That's just not the way they're playing. That's not the way Miami plays. The only guy in this game that I think could be a little sneaky is Calvin Johnson. We know that the Dolphins' corners are a little bit undersized. We know Calvin might be under-owned because it's his first game back from injury. But that said, I'm not in love with him. I would not use Calvin in cash. And we have all 3 running backs healthy for Detroit. Joyk, Riddick, and Reggie Bush. I think they're going to kind of cannibalize each other a bit. And I think Golden Tate, we've seen how much his targets take a hit when Calvin Johnson is back. Golden Tate is someone that we've all ridden pretty hard in the weeks leading up to this game. I would not go back to the well with him this week.
Yeah, I'm on the same page. The one guy that I am going to have exposure to, and literally probably the only guy, is Calvin Johnson. I think he won't be on enough people's radar just because he hasn't played. There's always a huge recency bias in any time someone creates a roster, and I just don't think Calvin Johnson is going to be top of mind for a lot of people. And although it's not a great matchup, I'm worried about the pace of the game. Calvin Johnson is just simply too good to not have exposure to. Smiz, what are your thoughts on him? And are Adam and I nuts? Do you see anyone else that you like in this game?
No, I mean, obviously Calvin's got a huge size advantage over the cornerbacks that he's going to be facing this week, but this just looks like a knockdown dragout. It could be like a 16-13 or a 13-10 sort of game. Yeah,
so there's really not much here other than Calvin. you guess you could take a flyer on Mike Wallace. He did burn a lot of people last week, but again, Detroit's defense is just it's elite. So that's really it for this game. Let's talk some real fantasy goodness, though, Adam. Cowboys and Jaguars. Curious your thoughts on this game here. And also, do you have any new news on Tony Romo?
Yeah, so I think he's going to be fine. I mean, they listed him probable, which means he's almost certain to play. I had a blurb up earlier this week about Bryce Petty, the Baylor quarterback who had the exact same injury that Tony Romo had, missed one game just like Romo did, came back and looks fine. So I think Romo is going to be fine, and that definitely puts Des Bryant in play for me against the Jacksonville secondary that was already bad and is really banged up on the outside too. And people have been burned by Des a lot of late. I do think he'll be underowned a bit. And my number one running back, regardless of price, is DeMarco Murray. I like DeMarco Murray more than Matt Forte. I think he's worth paying up for on both sides, on FanDuel and on DraftKings. There's really not that many value running backs I'm too excited about this week. I think running back is a spot that I'm going to try to pay up for at least and try to fit in DeMarco Murray.
Okay, that's interesting. I want to stay on that just for a second, and we'll kind of go off this game for a minute. Top running back, I think, is very, very interesting. I have Forte the highest, personally. Smiz, what are your thoughts on Murray versus Forte versus anyone else you want to put in that top tier?
Well, I have Forte as well. I'm not a huge fan of DeMarco Murray right now. I don't like the matchup as much as everybody else does. I do think that the wide receivers on Dallas have a better matchup, but I think that Murray gets an upgrade because Romo's back. So he's better than he is with Whedon. If Romo was out, I thought the Jaguars were a great kind of a sneaky GPP play because nobody's going to play them. The interesting thing to think about in this game, this is the London game, and Wembley Field, terrible turf. Like just straight up god-awful. So, patches of turf are going to be flying up everywhere. They're not going to be able to get a lot of footing. So, yeah.
Yeah. I do like Des Bryant a lot in this game, and I think the top running backs is certainly interesting. You're definitely going to have more value, in my opinion, on DraftKings with Forte just with the PPR factor. I expect him to catch a lot of balls versus Green Bay. But going back to this game, on the other side of the ball, I haven't really been taking guys against Dallas's defense just because they're not on the field that much because Dallas has been so good at controlling the ball. Do you have any faith in anyone on the Jaguars, Adam?
I have not been a Denard Robinson guy, and that's burned me a little bit because he's been really impressive, earning a huge share of the carries, even though Toby Gerhart is back healthy and playing reasonably well. But I just don't see it for Denard this week, in a game where the Jaguars probably aren't going to get that many plays off in a game and may not be in the red zone that much. Another game that could very well be low scoring. Not too much on Denard, especially because I think people might be on him because he's played so well lately.
Yeah, Smiz, any thoughts there?
You do have the correlation of the Cowboys allowing over 5 yards per carry and Denard Robinson for the last 3 games averaging 5.77 yards a carry. So that combination does usually tend to lead to better results. I'm not expecting to get like a 25 carry game, but if he gets 16 carries at 5 yards a carry and maybe gets his way into the end zone, which they have been using him inside the 5-yard line to carry the ball, and he's been effective in short yardage, I don't mind him at all as a tournament play. He's not expensive. He's more expensive on DraftKings than he is on FanDuel. FanDuel, he's sub 7K, and I think he's definitely in play there.
Okay, I think he's a GPP play for me. My big concern in using anyone versus Dallas in cash games is Dallas just kills the clock. Mm-hmm. That's one of the worst things that you can have happen. But certainly for GPP, especially if the Jaguars can maintain control possession in this game, potentially cause a couple turnovers, I definitely think that could be a nice play. Let's move to another game that I actually am really high on, and I'm curious your guys' thoughts. 49ers at Saints. Adam, we'll start with you. I think the Saints have really started to turn around on offense, and I really think a big part of the reason that's happened is Ingram has been so effective on the ground. I think that opens up play action. I think that helps the offensive line. And Drew Brees is still pretty cheap on some sites. What are your thoughts on this game, and are you as high on me as I am on Drew Brees?
Yeah. I have Brees my third quarterback, regardless of price, behind Peyton and Aaron Rodgers. But the guy that I really like, I've seen a lot of people that have Julius Thomas as their number 1 tight end. I really think that Jimmy Graham is my number 1 tight end this week. Practice in full this week. Shoulder is not an issue. Meanwhile, Patrick Willis, probably the best cover linebacker in the league, is probably not going to play with his toe injury. Really think that Jimmy Graham is going to be a huge part of his game plan, whereas with Julius Thomas, Pete can probably talk to this, but Julius Thomas, I think there's so many mouths to feed there. There's so much more competition for targets, and there's a good chance Payne could try to get Julius Thomas going, but I kind of think that Jimmy Graham is a better bet for double-digit targets in this game where he's going to not be able to be covered. Patrick Willis. So I'm going to have all the Jimmy Graham in my cash games. And yeah, Mark Ingram, volume. No Pierre Thomas again, no Kiri Robinson again, just tons of volume for Mark Ingram in a game that they should be winning. They're favored by 5.5. I think we've seen the wheels come off the 49ers a bit.
Yeah, we're on exactly the same page. The big news for me was Willis, like you said. He's doubtful, right? That's what you just said?
They listed him questionable, but nobody's expecting him to play.
Okay, because obviously that's something to monitor. But yeah, like you said, no one expects him to play. So Graham is finally starting to get healthier, finally looking more comfortable on the field. I think we will see the return of the elite tight end that Jimmy Graham has been in years past. Smiz, what are your thoughts on this game? We didn't talk about anyone on San Francisco. I know all of us got burned by Kaepernick last week. Maybe jump on him for a contrarian play? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I like him in GPP. As you saw the Bart Simpson image that I put out, I will not play him in cash games. But it's an interesting spot for him to be in this week because this game is really high total, and with them being on the road, they should have to throw to play keep up with New Orleans. I expect New Orleans to be able to score it. I expect 25 touches for a guy like Ingram. As Adam mentioned, Graham is definitely in a good spot if Willis is out this weekend, if things kind of go along those lines. Which means that they're going to put up some points, are the Saints, which means, to me, somebody like Bolden, who's become his favorite target. We thought it was going to be Crabtree, but it's really Anquan Bolden. He's been very steady, getting tough yards, and they look to him in the red zone. He would be the only receiver target that I would use personally along with Kaepernick.
Okay, I think that's more than fair, and certainly the Bolden thing is interesting. I'm not sold that Crabtree is 100% or even close to it. I think his foot's been bothering him. He just doesn't look quite right. He's dropping some passes, which never happens. Harbaugh said he's the best he's ever seen at catching the ball. Obviously, he's going to say stuff like that about his own players, but still, that's something pretty drastic to say. So I think there's a lot wrong with Crabtree right now, and I certainly am not going to take him until he kind of explodes. So it sounds like we're on Breeze, Graham, potentially Crabtree as a GPP play. Adam, last question for you. If you're not going to go Graham, do you have a favorite pass catcher for the Saints?
So hard to predict. I don't think it's going to be Colston. It doesn't seem like he might have much left in the tank. If anybody, it would be Cooks just for big play appeal. I mean, that would be the only guy. Like Stills has been hot lately, but he's still playing that Robert Meacham, Devery Henderson role where he kind of has those low percentage routes. For me, it would be Cooks if I wanted to pair anybody with Breeze other than Graham.
Okay, I think that's more than fair. All right, let's keep it moving here. We got the Titans and Ravens. I've heard some interesting takes on this game. Start with you, Adam. Notable injuries. I haven't checked on Jimmy Smith. What's going on with injuries in this game?
Out for the year, Jimmy Smith.
Okay, good.
Huge blow, yeah. We saw them just get lit by Ben Roethlisberger last week without Jimmy Smith. I mean, just opened up a huge hole in their defense. And, yeah, I know we've talked about Justin Hunter a ton. I couldn't imagine a better spot for him this week, a game where they're 10-point dogs, where Mettenberger likes to rip it long, where they're going to be behind, playing catch-up, throwing some bombs against backup corners. I like Justin Hunter as a cheap GPP play, and I'm not even against him, on FanDuel where the pricing is so tight. I mean, Justin Hunter is only 5,400 or 5,200, I believe. I'm kind of tempted to use Justin Hunter there too, as crazy as that sounds. So yeah, I really like Justin Hunter in this spot. I like Ravens D. I think Mettenberger makes plenty of mistakes. Justin Forsett. I'm curious what you guys think about Justin Forsett because he's not a volume guy like Al likes. He might not be a 20 to 25 touch guy, but I do think that he's in a good spot against kind of a soft Tennessee defense in a game they're supposed to be winning.
Yeah, Al, what are your thoughts there?
Well, I like Forsett because he gets, he's not going to get 25-plus touches, but he does correlate well with that defense. And people are going to make the mistake, because Jimmy Smith is out, at least this is my opinion. Because Jimmy Smith is out, people are going to say, well, look what happened last week with the Steelers, and the Steelers tore him up, and so therefore the Titans are going to tear him up too. Mettenberger is not Roethlisberger, and Hunter is not Antonio Brown. So those are two totally different sort of animals. All the offensive weapons on the Steelers are better than the offensive weapons on the Titans. There is nothing like Le'Veon Bell on the Titans right now. There is nothing like Martavis Bryant as a secondary receiver on the Titans right now. So to me, it's a big step down. So I do like the Ravens defense, and I like how they correlate with Justin Forsett. I think the Ravens are going to have to kind of nail things down. They're still going to get pressure onto the quarterback. They should be able to get a few sacks in this game, maybe force some bad throws, could turn into a pick six. And when you couple that with Forsett, thinking that they're going to be playing from ahead, he should get more carries. The only thing that you're worried about when you play Forsett is that they don't tackle him inside the 5, because he will not be in the game on the next play.
Yeah, that's the big concern for me, is just red zone opportunities or goal line opportunities. I am on Hunter as a GPP play. I know Adam, that Evan is also really high on Hunter. I fall victim to that over and over and over again. So I'm not going to let Hunter be the guy that burns me when I don't take him. So I'll just continue to have my fair share of exposure to him. Anyone else that you want to bring up, Adam?
Torrey Smith is going to get his shots against really bad corners in this game. We've seen that happen. I think we've seen Steve Smith's target share kind of shrink like we thought it would, and Torrey Smith's opportunities grow a little bit. There's definitely a little bit of an opportunity there, but I'd actually rather take a shot on Hunter than Torrey this week.
Okay. All right. Let's keep it moving here. And this is, speaking of missing guys and not having exposure, I've had 0 Big Ben shares the last 2 weeks. 12 touchdowns in 2 games. Getting a lot of MVP talk now, and I love him again here against the Jets. Absolutely love this entire passing game. So, Smiz, I'll start with you. You got Big Ben as an elite option, I think, and you also have all these receivers now, especially Martavis Bryant, who's really emerged as a red zone threat and someone that Ben is looking to. So, your thoughts on the Pittsburgh passing game?
Well, I mean, as Silva kind of touched on in his column for Roto-World today, Martavis Bryant is not getting all of the share of snaps. He's kind of splitting that wide receiver 2 spot with Marcus Wheaton. However, in order to incorporate him more in the offense, which is what they had to do to get a big receiver on the field for Ben, they kind of had to ditch this the hurry-up offense, which allows him to be on the field because he's a really good athlete, but too smart. So he could not grasp the hurry-up offense. So now that they've slowed it down, they're a completely different type of team. So using what they did in the first few weeks versus what they've become in the last few, to me, is wrong. They're just not the same team offensively now that they were the first 5 weeks of the season. So we have to look at them since Martavis Bryant came into the lineup. Now, I love Brown in this game. I do like Le'Veon Bell. I think that Ben Roethlisberger is one of your better value quarterbacks, and this is where Adam and I are going to fight because while I don't think Ben is going to throw 5 or 6 touchdowns, I do think that they're going to score 24 or 27 points against the Jets. And that means 3 touchdowns. The Jets are very good against the run, though they did give up a couple touchdowns on the ground. When they get inside the 10-yard line, Ben calls his own number. I could see 2 touchdowns. I could see 300 yards passing very easily for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And at the price that he's at, it's very reasonable. On the other side of the ball, though, Percy Harvin is killing it since he became a Jet.
Yeah, lots of targets, lots of catches. I definitely have exposure to him. Adam, first you can go at Smiz if you want here, and then your thoughts on Harvin.
Right. So I know I'm onto something here because I've been talking a lot how I think the Jets are going to win this game, how I think that the Steelers will lay an egg, and that will include Ben Roethlisberger, and nobody agrees with me. Not the Twitter community, not the expert community, quote unquote, nobody in the industry believes. So I'm onto something here for sure. Okay. Teams are not going to play at this high level week. There's going to be letdowns over the course of a season. I think this is an ideal spot for a Steelers letdown. These last 3 games where Ben Roethlisberger has a 14-0 touchdown interception ratio have all come at home. This game is on the road. They're coming off of a Sunday night win against the Ravens, emotional over their arch rival. I think it's an ideal letdown spot. Okay, Vegas agrees. Vegas only made Pittsburgh a 4-point favorite. That line has only moved up to 4.5, even though everybody and their grandmother is betting on the Steelers. So if they're going to let down, how is that going to happen, right? Well, obviously, the reason that people are so high on Big Ben is because you can't run the ball against the Jets, and you can throw it against them. So yeah, I think they're going to score 20 points. I think a realistic projection for Big Ben is 250 yards and 2 touchdowns, maybe 2.5 touchdowns in your projection machine. Now, is that going to be enough to meet where he's going to be owned at in GPPs? Is that going to be enough to meet his salary on FanDuel, which I believe is 8,300? I think that the better play is to pay up for Peyton Manning or Aaron Rodgers, or to go for value with Mark Sanchez or Michael Vick, who I really like. As I transition to the Jets, who I obviously like in the spot, I think they're going to win the game. Love a Vick, Percy Harvin stack. You talked about how much they're getting fed. Michael Vick, when he's not hurt, which of course there's risk of in-game injury, which makes him a risky cash game play. But when he's not hurt, he's filling the box score. I think he went into Arrowhead and played better than we all expected he would. Now he gets the Steelers at home. No Shazier, no Palomalu, no Ike Taylor. He has Eric Decker. He has Percy Harvin. He has legs that are still elite. I think Michael Vick is a great GPP play. So yeah, my argument for Roethlisberger, I know it sounds flimsy. You can go to my Roto Grinders column. I might have explained it better there. I just think that this is a spot where the Steelers just really crash back to earth.
Okay, a couple of things. One, I don't have Roethlisberger as my number one cash game quarterback. I agree that Rodgers is, to me, the number one cash game play. I think Manning's number two. But for value, he's 8,300. He only needs 16.5 points on FanDuel to pay that off. And the numbers that you just threw out for him easily pays that off for cash games. I agree with you, he's going to be heavily owned in tournaments. However, that doesn't affect my decision making in terms of, is he a good value play for cash games. Now, in terms of Vegas, they have it installed as a 4.5-point favorite. That means that the Jets are at home, they get an immediate 3 points, so they think they're a touchdown better.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Two, I hope the Jets score a ton. I mean, the best case scenario for Ben is that the Jets get up 21-7, because then they're just going to just fire. I need the Jets to do something in this game. I don't think the Pittsburgh can stop the Jets. I agree with you on Vic. I definitely think Harvin's a play. Decker's looked better since Harvin got there. I think this game is going to have more points than people expect. I don't expect it to be like 35-32, but I don't think it's going to be 17-13 either.
Right. So from a game theory perspective, if you think everybody in your head-to-heads is also going to have Big Ben, do you want to have Big Ben and just cancel that out, or would you rather go elsewhere?
It depends. I mean, sometimes I take people for the block. If a guy is just totally mispriced, Ben is not totally mispriced.
Right.
But if I can get all the players in around him that I need, then I'll just use the guy that I think has a really great floor, and if you don't use him, then you don't use him. Your lineup looks a lot different with Peyton Manning or Rodgers than it does with just coming down to Ben's price level.
Sure.
So to me, that's why I really like him as a value play in cash games.
In GPP, will Ben Roethlisberger be on the winning team in the DraftKings or FanDuel Sunday Million?
Oh, I mean, I'm going to say no just because it's a 1 in 24 shot. So he's already behind right there. I mean, if he has another 5 touchdowns, yeah, probably. But I can't predict 5 touchdowns for any quarterback.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, Adam. In your shoes, if you're taking a stance, I think it makes total sense not to play Ben at all in cash games. I think those are probably your best weeks as a cash game player. Is if you feel like someone is overvalued or someone's going to be utilized a lot by the majority of players, and you're not on them. That's a huge opportunity in cash because you're going to have, not just a different player at that spot, but most likely a much different type of roster, because when there's someone that everyone uses a lot, that dictates a certain type of roster construction. So you're kind of at a big advantage, if you're right, obviously, and if you're wrong, it's not so good. But I have been very, very, very interested in watching these games with Pittsburgh. I think Pouncey really deserves a lot of credit. The offensive line has looked marginal at points, but recently they're doing just a great job for Ben, and Ben is really picking teams apart. I think some of that definitely has to do with weaker pass rushes that they face, but I do think that they still can have a really, really nice game. I do hear you, though, Adam. That makes total sense from, if you were handicapping this game, your thought process, I think, is pretty good there. So I'm going to have exposure to Big Ben this week in tournaments, but not in any cash games. I certainly think there's better options. Let's keep it moving to another game that I actually think has a lot of fantasy goodness, the Falcons and the Buccaneers. Falcons absolutely destroyed the Bucs last time. It was just an absolute embarrassment. The big difference for me here is McCoy's back for the Buccaneers, and he makes all the difference in the world. I think he really deserves the contract that he got. Not saying it makes the Bucs a good team, but certainly doesn't make them just absolutely abysmal. Adam, your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, so I was, really liking Atlanta coming off of a bye. Julio was battling a bit of an ankle injury before the bye, was dropping some passes. Now he's 100%. I think that he has a good game. I think Matt Ryan has a good game. I think Roddy White has a good game. We should note that Alteron Werner, the top corner for the Bucs, is doubtful, making an already atrocious secondary even worse. The concern with using Atlanta in cash or GPP really is their offensive line against McCoy and those guys, like you said. I mean, if they just get completely collapsed in, it's going to be trouble for Matt Ryan. And yes, this game is in good weather. It is on the road, which I guess is a marginal concern, but I think the good weather makes it okay for Matt Ryan. So I'm high on all these guys. I'm not completely in love with them. We should note that when Julio put 162 and 2 on the Falcons, on the Bucs in that Week 3 game, Roddy White didn't play. Roddy White obviously will play in this game, and I think he's only like 6,600 on FanDuel. I think he's kind of a sneaky play there.
All right. I like all that analysis. Smiz, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, this game is swinging heavy to Atlanta. If you kind of look at Vegas, it opened up at even, and then it kind of really, the public has I think it was 75 or 80% of the money bet on the game was on Atlanta by the public, and it's still moving in that direction because the sharps are betting it that way as well. Rainey has been brought up as a good value play, and it's scary because they may not score that many points, but Julio Jones may as well be free on DraftKings this week. So.
Yeah, he's going to be very heavily owned, and certainly in my cash games. The big concern for me is exactly what Adam talked about. Like I talked about when I introduced this game, I think McCoy is one of the best defensive linemen in the entire NFL. Watched him, he just absolutely jumps off the tape. He's a guy that just has so much explosiveness, and he can move not one but two guys. And Atlanta has just gotten, they look absolutely abysmal with that offensive line. So that's my concern, but if they can block him at all and they can give Matt Ryan some time, he should absolutely destroy the secondary of Tampa Bay. So that's really where I'm at. It's hard to know exactly how that matchup's going to play out, the offensive line versus defensive line. But the big thing for me in this game is definitely taking Julio Jones on DraftKings. And Rainey, I think, is a nice punt play overall for tournaments. But Smiz, I'm with you. I'm concerned about Tampa Bay just in general as an offense. And I don't think I'll have much exposure to him in cash games, especially since there's some other values. So any last thoughts there, Smiz?
My question is, with McCown coming in, are you going to ride everybody else that's going to get on the Evans train, or are you going to go VJax thinking that he's going to be less owned? Because recency bias, everybody's going to be on Evans.
Right. Yeah. So I guess you guys probably know by now, whoever got all the money last week, I'm not going to be on this week. So I'm definitely not going to be on Mike Evans, especially with McCown coming in, who has a weaker arm than Mike Glennon. I think McCown is kind of more of an intermediate passer. Glennon likes to throw deep downfield more. Obviously, that plays into Mike Evans' hands. Vincent Jackson, he's on the injury report with a questionable with a knee. I think he'll be fine. But, I don't really love using either of them this week.
Okay, I think that's fair. I would use Vincent Jackson in tournaments more just because of the recency bias. But Evans is a guy who I think is going to put up some big numbers, not just this year but going forward. He has all the makings of being an elite wide receiver. I know Benjamin gets a lot more talk, and certainly we will touch on him here in a bit. But Mike Evans is a guy that people forget. He wasn't even a receiver until he got to, I think it was his senior year of high school, and then he played with Johnny Manziel at Texas A&M. He was a basketball player first. And normally we see these basketball players, come into tight ends, and we've seen that with Gates and Jimmy Graham. Evans is a special athlete, and I think he could be a really big star in the NFL down the road. And he gives definitely having a lot of good games now.
And he looks like Turtle from Entourage. So there's that.
Extra 5 points every weekend for having that if you're an Entourage fan. We got the game that I want to spend a lot of time on, obviously, the Broncos and the Raiders. This is a big bounce-back game for the Broncos. I was absolutely devastated last week. I tweeted that it was a scary day to be a Broncos fan. Pretty much all the bad things that can happen to Peyton Manning and the Broncos happened last week. I think they bounced back, and I think they, really embarrassed the Raiders here. I am just as bullish as I can possibly be on everything about the Broncos defense, Peyton Manning, all the pass catchers, Ronnie Hillman. Adam, if you obviously you're less biased than me, who are your biggest targets in this game?
So you have Julius over Jimmy Graham, regardless of price?
I have Jimmy Graham. Jimmy Graham's my number one.
Okay. Yeah, because I've seen a lot of people that have Julius, and that scares me. Obviously, I already talked about the targets thing. I do like Julius. I think he's way cheaper on DraftKings, if I'm not mistaken, than Jimmy Graham.
Yep.
Yeah, so that makes things interesting. I mean, I do think, we've always talked about how Peyton likes to feed guys that haven't been going that well. Julius obviously hasn't been getting the volume. Maybe he gets going in this game. The guy that scares me a bit, I agree with you, Manny Sanders, Denver D, Demarius, love them all. The guy that scares me is Ronnie Hillman. Monty Ball is going to be back, allegedly will likely be back for this game. Slimmed down 12 pounds, reportedly looks way faster. And we saw Ronnie Hillman kind of nick his ankle against the Patriots. Didn't finish out that game. C.J. Anderson and Juwan Thompson did. It wouldn't surprise me at all. I think Adam Gase came out and kind of complained a bit how ineffective the run game was against the Patriots. It wouldn't surprise me if Ronnie Hillman scuffles a bit early to see a little bit of rotation, whether it's Monty Ball, whether it's C.J., whether it's Juwan. So Ronnie Hillman scares me a bit at the running back spot. But other than that, yeah, I think it's all systems go. I do have Peyton above Aaron Rodgers as my number one quarterback.
I like hearing that. I am torn on that. Smiz, talk to me a little bit about Denver D, and then also your thoughts on Peyton Manning versus Aaron Rodgers.
Okay, well, the Denver D is really good, partially because their run defense is fantastic. They allow very few yards per carry. It's minuscule, so you just can't run against them. And then you're behind, and you just can't afford to run the ball against them. You have to throw, and they've got really elite cornerbacks that you're throwing at. So while they give up a lot of yards, their efficiency is good. And the only reason they give up a lot of yards is because everybody's throwing a ton because they're always down 21 points, 7 minutes into the game. If you look at the sheet that I have, Pete, you know that I'm a pen and pad guy.
Yep.
So here's my sheet for football this week. This is my Week 10 sheet. Whole lot of writing. Every single game. I'll get it closer. See, here's every game. And there's all these little things, all this tiny handwriting that I do. If you could look at the Broncos game, which is right here for the later games, all the analysis I have for the Broncos, I have some analysis for the Raiders. The Broncos says Broncos are good, Raiders are really, really bad.
It's good analysis. It's
at everything.
Yes.
So, yeah, get as many Broncos as you can in your lineup. And just use them liberally. Hillman, yes. Thomas, yes. Julius Thomas, tournaments only.
Right.
Sanders, yes. On the Raiders side, kind of like Rivera.
Yeah. And Adam, I want to go back to you on this because I actually had different notes than you, and I just want to hear your opinion because I know Ball was limited today in practice. With a groin injury, you think they bring him back, or you think they rest him? Are you feeling good that he comes back for sure?
Well, the Jeff Legwold, who covers the Broncos for ESPN, said it looks like they're going to at least dress him. I don't know if that means maybe he's in an emergency back situation. But even if they don't, we saw CJ and Juwan finish that game out. I don't know. Listen, I'm not completely against using Hillman. I just think there's safer options for cash.
Yeah, no, I totally get that, and that's something that you definitely want to monitor here. Because Monte Ball is a guy that they're bullish on as an organization, and I think they still they want to get him going. It's going to be interesting to see kind of how this whole backfield plays out. Could be a nightmare for us going forward when everyone's healthy. But certainly, if Ball is out, I still think Hillman's a nice play. But if he is dressing and we're not sure about it, definitely like fading him for cash games because there are some other really, really nice running backs.
Well, where do you think he's going? Yeah, there's a little opportunity cost at his price point, especially on FanDuel, where he's in the same range as McCoy and Ingram and some other guys that are big volume backs. So there's a little opportunity cost there in terms of if you take him, you're not taking one of these other guys more than likely. However, if Ball comes back and starts stealing a little bit of carries to work his way back in, he's not going to be stealing Hillman's carries. Is he going to be stealing Anderson's carries? He's going to be stealing the other guy's carries. He's not going to be taking Hillman's carries. Yes or no? I mean, at some point, they have to realize that one of the reasons that they've been so successful with the run game since Ball went out is because Ball's not the one running the ball anymore, because Hillman has been so explosive out of the backfield, both running the ball and in the passing game, that if you throw Ball back out there, it's like the defense says, oh, great, we get a guy we can easily wrap our arms around and tackle and slow the game down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my only concern, Smiz, just with that is the red zone carries, and in particular right at the goal line. I know that Hillman is an electric player, especially in the passing game. I love how he kind of stretches the floor, or not the floor, talking NBA here, stretches the field a little bit, in that he
do play like basketball. They get a lot of attempts up.
Yeah, he can break a big one, and also I think that something they can use him more with is like wheel routes. I think he can really get down the field quickly, obviously with his speed. But I am a little concerned, especially if you're rostering for cash, that if Ball is healthy and playing and they feel good about Ball, that they get down first and goal at the 1 or 2, that's probably not going to be Hillman. But I could be wrong on that. I really have no idea. Definitely going to be interesting to see how this backfield plays out when everyone's healthy. Let's keep it moving. Obviously, you don't need to hear any more from me. Play the Broncos. That makes you money. The Rams and the Cardinals. This game is pretty ugly. I actually like Arizona defense a decent amount here. Smiz, will start with you. Michael Floyd,
No.
Palmer, all these guys.
Palmer, sure, because he's going to be able to throw it and he's going to spread it around. Cardinals defense, yes, I like them a lot, and I want to pair. I mean, you've heard me on this show for 10 weeks now, guys. You know that if I'm going to like a defense and I think they're going to win, I'm probably going to pair that defense with the running back, so I like Ellington as well.
Yep. Those are the guys I really like. Adam, any differing opinions here? Anyone that you like?
The only guy I had on my list from this game is Andre Ellington. I will have some Arizona D for sure. Yeah, I mean, the thing with Michael Floyd is like he's only getting like 4.5 targets per game. Carson's targeting between 8 and 10 different pass catchers every game. There's just not enough volume there. Yeah,
it's pretty scary for any of the Arizona pass catchers at this point in time, especially Floyd. Obviously, Fitzgerald's still consistent, and the rookie, it's Brown, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep, John Brown.
John Brown. I always watch him and I'm amazed at his speed. Certainly a big play GPP kind of guy, but you just really can't trust any of these guys for cash. I think we can safely move forward. The cash game plays for this are Ellington and Arizona D. We got the Seahawks and the Giants. The Seahawks defense is certainly in play for me. Marshawn Lynch at home, I mean, he's got some severe home road splits over his career. I think he gets Skittles on the field again. So that's a combination, kind of what Smiz likes there with the defense and the running back that I'm looking at. Adam, I'll start with you. Do you see any value in potentially Russell Wilson, the pass catchers, and are you on anyone on the Giants?
Well, first on Lynch, I have him as my number 3 running back, behind only DeMarco and Forte. So really like Marshawn Lynch, really liked him last week, obviously, too. But this week, this Giants team going across the country without John Beeson, their middle linebacker, who's one of the better run stuffers. At the middle linebacker spot, I think Marshawn Lynch has a great game. Other plays in this game for me are limited. I mean, I could make an argument for Giants guys. It would just be really weak. I mean, I have no confidence in Eli Manning, and I definitely don't have confidence in him going up to Seattle. I think Odell Beckham's going to see plenty of Richard Sherman. I don't think there's any chemistry between Reuben Randall and Eli Manning. Doug Baldwin is a little banged up. He's going to play through it. But he was never an exciting guy for me. He was never really a guy that I was really in love with either. I think he's kind of a little more low upside guy. And a guy I've taken a shot on the last 2 weeks in GPPs, Jermaine Kearse, has another great matchup with Prince Amukamara out, but he just hasn't done anything in really great matchups already. I think I'm just going to give up the ghost on him this week.
All right. I'm on the same page. Larry Donnell is one guy I'll ask you about, Smiz, for the Giants. Any interest in him? And are you going to take any flyers in the Seattle passing game?
Probably not going to take any flyers on the Seattle passing game. LD is one of my three kind of low dollar tight ends that I'm considering this week. Owen Daniels, mentioned Michael Rivera already, and LD is the other one. Those are the 3 guys I'm not paying up for Graham that I'm kind of looking at the low end. ODB spent a lot of time in the slot in the last game. That's one of the things that I thought was a little bit encouraging going into this matchup, but he also spends a lot of time on Sherman's side. So there's going to be at least half of the snaps that he runs routes are just going to be ignored. So if you think he's going to run routes on like 60% of the snaps, then, okay, 30% are viable.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And every time you say LD Smith, all I can think of is Larry David.
Of course.
It's regardless. I just think of that one of the looks on his faces. Hello, you're big. Are you a Curb Your Enthusiasm fan?
Of
I
course, my favorite show.
That's one of my favorite shows, if not my favorite show as well.
You
So.
realize I had lunch next to him at Sugarfish like a couple months ago.
Oh my gosh! All the teasing. The fanboy in me would have gone wild, not only for the great sushi, but for Larry David. I probably would have said something stupid. Um, I guess we can keep it moving here because we got two great games that I want to talk a lot about, and I want to spend some time, especially on the Eagles game since we have Adam here. Let's move to the Packers and the Bears. This has so much potential fantasy goodness and a lot of different ways in which the game can go dictates which guys you like. Smiz, I know you took a look at Thursday ownership, and we talked a little bit about the difference between Alshon Jeffrey and Brandon Marshall.
Yeah.
Let's start with the Bears first and talk to us about the ownership there and how you're viewing this game from the Bears' perspective.
Well, this is highly classified information because now the salaries are the players are covered up, so having this information is key. So tuning into this show is the only way to get this information unless you figure out how to do it yourself. Brandon Marshall was like 10.8% owned, and where did he go? 7.9K was 2%. Alshon Jeffrey was 2%. That's a pretty big difference, at least to me. It's like, and I'm not sure that you can say, well, Brandon Marshall's definitely going to get it. But from building a lot of lineups so far on FanDuel, I've noticed that it's hard. There's a big jump. There's a big gap between Marshall at 7,300, then there's nobody viable until like Alshon Jeffrey at 79. So I think the salary gap is what's keeping people off. Also, if you're paying 8K, they're paying for Julio Jones and not Alshon Jeffrey. So the percent owned really makes Jeffrey the way better tournament play this weekend as opposed to Brandon Marshall.
Yeah, and he's the perfect kind of tournament guy, big play potential. I am so bullish on Matt Forte, that we talked about before, especially on a PPR side like DraftKings. This seems like a Matt Forte type of game to me. I see him getting really, really involved from the get-go. I think he'll be able to run the ball efficiently. I think they'll have to utilize him in the screen game. I just really, really like him. Adam, your thoughts on that, and then we can talk about Aaron Rodgers, who is very good at football, and all the pass catchers that they have.
Sure. So for the Bears, we should note Martellus Bennett hurt his ribs in practice on Thursday. Looks like he's very, very questionable. Now, we're not going to know on FanDuel probably. It looks like a game-time call. This is an 8:30 Sunday night football game. But if no Martellus Bennett, yeah, I would give a big boost to Marshall and Jeffrey for sure. And I think this is a game that the Bears will be trailing in. I'm not ready to write off Jay Cutler and Mark Trestman as kind of an elite passing scheme plus touchdown throwers. So, yeah, I think the Bears are all definitely in play. I think the way you beat the Packers is not – go ahead, Al.
No, it's kind of building on what you're saying. I want you to expound on this, but Cutler has a bad history against the Packers since Don Capers has been the defensive coordinator. And I don't remember last year, and I failed to look this up before we went on the air. Did he play in those two games last year, or was it McCown that played against the Packers last year? Because does he have any Trestman influence in those terrible statistics against Don Capers, or is this all just a red herring because now he's running this great offense with a fantastic mastermind in front of it?
Right. I'm not sure either. I feel like he might have missed one of the games last year. It was a McCown game. I can't say for sure. But, on the bad side of Jay Cutler, I do think that the way you beat the Packers is by running the football. I mean, their run defense is far, far, far worse than their pass defense. So I do like Matt Forte. I know he's like something crazy, like 10,000 or something on DraftKings, which I guess on DraftKings you can fit him in because we can fit in just about anybody on DraftKings. But, yeah, I think Matt Forte is a great play. If you give me those ownership percentages, yeah, Alshon every time. I do think Brandon Marshall is in play also. So yeah, if you want to go to Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers to me is right there with Peyton Manning. I have Peyton Manning slightly ahead. I think Peyton Manning is the one more likely to throw 4 to 5 touchdowns, where Aaron Rodgers might only be 3 to 4, just because Eddie Lacy, the battering ram, is going to come in there at the goal line. But I really like Aaron Rodgers for both cash and GPP. And I haven't heard that many people talking about Jordy Nelson this week. I've heard people talking about Julio. I've heard them talking about Demaryius. I'm hoping not that many people are on Jordy Nelson because I think he's going to have a real big game.
Yeah, I'm totally on that. Adam, have you ever heard the Captain Crunch song by Martellus Bennett?
I don't think so.
Do yourself a favor and YouTube that right after. And anytime Martellus Bennett has a good matchup, you just have to put that song on because it's great. It's the Super Mario
He loves
music.
Captain Crunch.
Yeah, and he loves Captain Crunch. It's pretty amazing. So I've probably overplayed Martellus Bennett because of that song, but it is what it is. Jordan Nelson, I agree with you. Great call. I think he's a guy that people just aren't on. They got burned by him last time he played, and I think that he's a guy that's probably going to be under-owned relative to where he should be. Absolutely love him. I think Cobb's another guy that just really starting to show his explosiveness, and the touchdown thing I don't think is a fluke at all. I mean, we're 10 weeks into the season now, and he's scoring at will, so I really do like him a lot. And then in addition to that, Devontae Adams, he had a couple miscues against the Saints, but they kept trying to get him on the field, and I've watched a lot of tape on the Packers. He gets really open. So I think he's another guy that people just aren't on that were really on before for that Saints game. So Smiz, your thoughts on the Green Bay passing game, and then also, is there any injury news in the Bears secondary, Adam?
Not that I've seen. No, I think Fuller is going to play. Other than that, I haven't seen anybody.
Okay,
They're
so
not injured. They just suck. There's a difference. I mean, they're just not talented players at stopping people from catching the ball and then running with it in their hands. That's really the problem. And we see the last two games that the Packers have played against the Bears. Jordy Nelson has had 10 catches in each of those games. The last time that they faced each other, Cobb also had 7 catches for 113 and 2 touchdowns in the first meeting. And if you mentioned Adams, the last 5 games, their target breakdown has been Jordy with 41, Cobb with 34, and Adams right behind them with 24. So there's a lot of feed going to these guys. Obviously, Adams is a low man on the totem pole, but his salary kind of reflects that. $5,200 on FanDuel, $3,800 on DraftKings. He makes it very easy for you to have touchdown upside in a punt play and still have access to the really premium plays at the other positions.
Okay, I think that's really, really good analysis. We talked briefly about Lacy. Adam, do you have any exposure to him?
Yeah, I think that he's kind of been separating a little bit from Starks more than he was for a while there. They were going series by series. Now now Lacy is starting to get more of the snaps, more of the towards 2/3 or 3/4 of the snaps. I think Lacy won't be highly owned. You know, people think he's fat, etc. And we've seen him get really involved in the pass game lately. I think he had some crazy 8 catches in his last game. And the Packers coaches came out and said they wanted to keep him involved in the pass game. I think that's a great sign. I think that in a game with an over-under of 53, which I believe is the highest of the week, that there's going to be a lot of touchdowns to be scored here. There's definitely in play for Eddie Lacy to have more than one.
All right. Well, this is a great game, guys. Certainly, if you're stacking games, which is a GPP strategy that is very effective, I think this is right up there as the best game to stack, just because it can go back and forth. We could see a close game, and Rodgers and Cutler, if they both get hot, it's going to be hard for either defense to stop the other team. So let's move to Monday night, which also has a lot of goodness. And Adam, I'm going to let you take the show here because the big thing for me is this offensive line finally going to be healthy for the Eagles. We're going to have a lot of good things happening for the Eagles with Mark Sanchez, I think, actually. Your thoughts on Sanchez initially, this offensive line, and then McCoy as well.
Yeah, so obviously we know that the Carolina defense is not only nothing to be feared, but something to be attacked on a week-to-week basis. People here think that Mark Sanchez is the savior. If you listen to talk radio, Mark Sanchez is way, way, way better than Nick Foles. I don't necessarily see it that way. If anything, I think Mark Sanchez is on an even playing field in terms of talent with Nick Foles. The whole thing for me with recommending Mark Sanchez as a cash game play is this offense. I mean, Nick Foles was not playing well. He wasn't atrocious, but he was not playing well. He was throwing off his back foot. He was holding the ball too long. He was making some poor decisions. He was turning the ball over, yet he was still averaging 290 pass yards a game, 1.7 touchdowns per game, just filling the box score just on a sheer volume, sheer number of plays. The Eagles run the second most amount of plays per game, only behind the Colts. And I don't think that changes with Sanchez. Sanchez is not a guy that Chip Kelly inherited in free agency. He's a guy that Chip Kelly went out and recruited. He said, I want this guy to be my backup. So that gives me a lot of confidence that he likes Mark Sanchez. He thinks he can run this scheme. If you watch the game last week, Mark Sanchez comes in cold off the bench, plays really, really well. One of the interceptions definitely wasn't his fault. The other one you could argue maybe wasn't his fault. It was a bad decision. You know, I think Mark Sanchez is going to have a really good game against these atrocious Panthers corners. I think he's a cash game play, especially on FanDuel where we need price savings. I think Jordan Matthews is a sneaky play as Sanchez and Matthews spent all summer together on the second team. I think they have good chemistry, and Matthews is up around 66% of the snaps of late. And obviously Jeremy Maclin is in play. And obviously, you know, everybody's on LaShawn McCoy, season-long players, daily league players. I don't think you can really go wrong with LaShawn McCoy in this spot either.
Yeah, McCoy's price just keeps going down and down. Got unlucky to not score a touchdown, which really would have boosted his score last week. So for anyone who's just looking at box scores and looking at the fantasy points, they might not be on him. This line coming together is by far the most critical thing for McCoy, and I am all in on LaShawn McCoy this week, as well as I think Matthews, who is someone I was really high on coming into the season. Loved him in the SEC, like I've talked about before. Really impressed me on Vanderbilt, a pretty marginal team that he produced week in, week out against SEC corners on a team that just wasn't very good. So I like him as well, and I think you bring up a great point with the rapport that he has with Sanchez. Smiz, your thoughts on this, and then I know we got to talk about Kelvin Benjamin. So your thoughts on the Eagles, who you're highest on, and then you can kind of start up the can of worms with Kelvin Benjamin.
Okay, well let me kind of give the counterpoint there, I guess, or not the counterpoint to Mark Sanchez, but like everybody thinks about Mark Sanchez, and I'm not hearing what you're hearing, Adam, because I'm not in Philly, so like everybody wants to stand by their quarterback. It's kind of like when I do the Cleveland show on Thursday mornings, I get questions all about like, tell me, should I start LaShawn McCoy or Terrence West? Should probably start McCoy. So like in Philly, all they want to talk about is this is our new quarterback, so this is our new quarterback. But everybody else in America is just, the only thing that they attribute to Mark Sanchez is butt fumble.
Right.
That's it. So they have this really terrible view of who he is, and they forget this is a really high pedigreed guy who was, one of the top high school quarterbacks in the nation, I think 1 or 2 in his class, went to USC, was a Heisman candidate, left there maybe a year earlier or whatever, and still was a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. You're talking about a very high pedigree, and then led a team to 2 straight AFC championships on a team that clearly has no clue how to deal with quarterbacks. So now you have a guy who also recruited him out of high school, like you said, brought him to his team to do well, and I think that this is a good situation for Sanchez. I could see very realistically him having 2 touchdowns and a pick, easily pays off his salary on every side.
All right.
Are you getting that echo from me? Or no?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I don't know what happened there, but all good. I guess the big question that a lot of people are going to have, and Adam, I'll let you answer this first. When constructing a cash game lineup, do you feel more comfortable with your rosters punting quarterback with Sanchez or spending up to someone like Rodgers or Peyton Manning?
Yeah, so on FanDuel, when I'm building my I hear the echo on me too, but
It's on Pete's end.
I'll try to fix that. I don't know what's happening with the echo. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. I think on FanDuel that I have to take the savings because I want to pay up at running back. I don't want to go with a Forsett, Rainey as my running back. On FanDuel. So in order to get that, I think I have to use Sanchez in a lot of my cash game lineups.
I have no idea what's going on with the echo, and it keeps coming back and forth on my screen. So sorry for the finish here, guys. Let me try to close one other thing here.
It sounds like the sound is coming out of your computer and then back into the mic.
Yeah, I have headphones plugged in. This is the only Roto Grinders thing I've set up here. So sorry for the finish here. Is it still echoing on my end, Smith?
Yeah.
That is.
Wait, let me try something. Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of Earth.
Damn it. What is happening? I have no idea why this is happening, but let's try to finish the show real quick because I know this is going to be very tilting for anyone watching. Real quick, Smiz, give your just a recap of who you're most bullish on this week and just some general thoughts.
Love Rodgers as a quarterback. I can dial down to Roethlisberger if I want, or I can go real low to somebody like Sanchez. Running back, it's all about LaShawn McCoy. If you're playing on draft, Kelvin Benjamin is free, and so is Jones. But you got to understand that they're going to be really highly owned in GPPs.
I will echo what Smith said.
Well,
Adam, go ahead and close the show, man.
Yeah, just like last week, I said that picking up for tight end is the way to go in your cash games because it's such a massive advantage over people kind of grasping at the straws of people that aren't playing a ton of snaps and not getting a ton of targets. So Jimmy Graham, for me, I'm going to start my lineup there. I'm going to start my lineup with Sanchez in cash on FanDuel, and I'm going to go from there.
All right. Well, sorry for the echo, guys. Hope you got some good information here. My last thought is play the Broncos. Good luck. Hope to see Grinders at the top of the leaderboard, and in particular, taking home $1 million or the big tournaments over there on FanDuel.